Today, we're going to be talking about a very important reason to buy gold and why it's not a common topic anymore. When it comes to physical gold, and I'm literally talking about coins, bars, rounds, things like that, economists out there might downgrade it or trivialize it as nothing more than a relic. And then the people out there that do buy it will often have no idea how to apply such an investment in their future. So first we need to ask, is gold truly nothing more than a relic? And if you do cut through all the noise and buy some gold anyway, how can it properly be applied? Let me start with giving you a premise that may help you first understand how and even why it should be purchased in the first place, and then why gold actually has far more power in the 21st century, despite what most people would otherwise think about it. There's an economic theory out there that was put forth nearly 3 decades ago by an economist named Timur Kuran. He's a professor of economics and political science at Duke University, and the theory is known as preference falsification. Now, just to give you a quick example of how this works, I once heard him give a talk where he gave a very simplified example of how this theory plays out. And he said was if you were to be invited over to someone's house and you walk in and perhaps it's decorated in such a way that is totally different than how you personally would decorate your own house, but then they walk over to you and they say, "What do you think about the new furniture?" You may very well falsify your own personal preferences in order to avoid that awkward situation and to keep from hurting their feelings. So you would say something like, "I think it's great." And then by doing so, you have now falsified your own preferences, your own taste, in order to keep the peace. Now, this idea can be extrapolated out into a lot of different fields, and in fact, analysts have actually attributed the last 2 presidential elections to this theory and the vast disparity in the polling versus the actual results, because so many people out there were outwardly withholding their internal political preferences, perhaps in order to avoid some confrontation or something like that. And so when you start applying this theory to economics, the idea that people's actual preferences are falsified on the outside, the implications get really serious really fast. Now, what I want to do here, in order to start giving us an idea of why we should be learning how to apply physical gold the right way, is I want to apply this theory to our monetary preferences and see how those preferences may have been what I'm going to say involuntarily falsified over 5 decades ago. So this is what you might call involuntary falsification of monetary preferences. It's involuntary because unlike the 2 examples I gave before where the preferences were falsified on purpose, in other words, the person is voluntarily saying, "Yeah, I like your furniture," even though they actually don't. I believe that in the case of our money, it was involuntary. So we've now involuntarily falsified something. What have we falsified? Our very own monetary preferences or our own money preferences. And here's what I mean. There was a time in the US where from 1879 to 1971, in some form or fashion, our money was tethered to gold. Now, it goes without saying, but obviously that made our money very strong at that time. Now, in 1971, when this changed, US citizens were told that by cutting the dollar from gold, therefore creating what we now know as a fiat currency, in other words, it's a paper or even digital currency that's not tied to anything tangible, we were told that this would empower the men and women of the Fed, that it would increase the general prosperity of the American people, and that it would provide protection against future recessions, maybe even produce high employment, and maybe even produce sustained economic growth. We were told all these things. What I'm getting at here is that the American people were sold on fiat currency being the better option, and they trusted their government based on what they were being told explicitly from the Oval Office. And they, of course, were convinced that this option was better than a gold standard of any kind. However, from the moment that this happened, our money, our savings, has carried an inflationary bias ever since, which has totally altered our perception of value, and it has made it almost impossible to have an accurate perception of value in general. Now, while some of those promises that the American people were told back in 1971 were true, many of those promises were broken very quickly after they were made. Yet, we were already convinced. I believe our monetary preferences, in other words, having a fiat currency over a gold standard, were involuntarily falsified at that time and have been, for the majority of people, ever since. Now, you might be thinking, "Ben, come on, how do you know what my preferences are here?" Well, obviously, I am generalizing a little bit, but here's why I believe that for the majority of people, a fiat money system is not preferable to a gold standard system or just gold in its own right. In other words, owning a little bit of it, perhaps as an investment. Going back a couple of centuries, anthropologists, archaeologists, historians, they all started compiling what they found to be the needed properties of money in order for a civilization's economy to thrive. They determined that money needed to be accepted by everyone, that it needed to be fungible, that it needed to be durable and portable, it needed to be uniform, it needed to be limited in supply, and of course it had to be divisible. Now, our fiat money is missing at least two of those. And while the perception is that it seems to be working just fine, that's what people have thought for the last 5 decades, we've been on a relatively short 50-year experiment. It's brand new in all of human history that has actually not gone too well for fiat money overall. So now you think, well, Ben, how do you know that? How do you know it hasn't been going well? And there are plenty of metrics that validate that particular idea, but for starters, the US dollar has lost 691% of its purchasing power since 1971, when Nixon closed the gold window. And that's according to CPI data. That's why I believe that our monetary preferences have been involuntarily falsified. Now, don't get me wrong here. It's certainly not lost on me that fiat money is ideal for exponential growth on the largest scale possible. I even talk about the pros of fiat money in my newest course, Barter to Currency. But here's the problem with fiat currency. It is detrimental to the individual, to the person that saves their money, to the person that's living on a fixed income, or whose wages are being outpaced by inflation, which not all that long ago was a wide-scale problem for a lot of people. All of the sudden, that inflationary bias that we started to have in 1971, which can be very severe at times, becomes a big problem for the everyday citizen, who are actually hoping to leave a sustainable inheritance to the next generation someday. So while I believe that our monetary preferences have been falsified and that fiat money is not preferable to real money like gold, there is something that we can do about it on an individual basis. For the same reason that gold can be and has been a great reset button for civilizations in the past and even in the present, it can be the same for us as well. It can help us offset that involuntary falsification of monetary preferences. Too many people out there misapply their metals purchases and treat them like any other investment or trading tool, but that's just not the case. Gold is a resource. It's a form of money by which your very livelihood may eventually depend. And here at TRADEway, we show you exactly how to apply gold and silver to your life and to your portfolio the right way. This is why I believe you should buy gold. We may not have been taught the varying dynamics of fiat money and the vulnerabilities that come with it, but we can start protecting ourselves from it now using something that's very easy to acquire, that being gold. Well, that's it for today, everybody. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more, check out the links in the description below, and we'll see you next time.